Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And from the University of Kentucky, I have Craig Skinner. Welcome.
Thanks, Barry. Good to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. And the way we start things off is we do a few random questions. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So what is the most interesting place you've ever played a match in?
Oh, geez. Probably in China. Probably not going to remember exactly the city, Jinjiako maybe. But it was on it was at a police academy in an industrialized city, and there was probably 3,000 people in there going crazy, and it was an informal, friendly match.
Wow.
So that would probably be the one.
That is pretty wild. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So what would your wife say is the best meal you make when you're in charge of cooking for the night?
I probably, and this is going to sound bougie, but I do like to make a good risotto. So
nice.
I like a little risotto with shiitake mushrooms and green vegetable of some sort, and maybe shrimp or chicken.
All right. Excellent. All right. And last question, what's your favorite movie? And let me preface that with, when Matt Ulmer was on, he caught me completely off guard when he said Sister Act 2 with Whoopi Goldberg.
I wasn't going to go there. I was probably going to go Good Will Hunting or Shawshank Redemption.
All right. That's not as surprising and shocking as, where Matt went. I was just totally out of left field on that one.
Oh yeah. I mean, the actors in those two movies, I just have the utmost respect for and just love the movies that they've been in. So you could probably name several movies that, in both those, shows that they've, incredible. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So welcome to the podcast. So, how's spring season going?
It's going well. We've had, we just finished really our 8-week season, 8-hour block. And so we've only been in the gym at, 2 or 3 or 4 hours at a time with our players and a little bit of, 6-on-6, but a lot of, training and improvement and strength, conditioning. And, but it's gone very well. It's, we have, basically our whole roster here this spring, which I don't think we've ever had.
Oh, wow.
We have 3 incoming freshmen that are enrolled early, and we have 3 transfers that got here in January. And, to have 14 people on the roster together is just pretty unique. So we're getting a little bit of a head start.
Nice. And now, with spring season, what do you try to get out of it? Just sort of the freshmen sort of up to a playing speed and just, build that chemistry?
Win at all costs in the spring. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously when you step on the floor, you compete to do your best to give yourself the best chance to win. But it's development, it's connection between players, it's chemistry, and I don't just mean chemistry, intangible chemistry. I mean the chemistry, how you work together on the floor, and breaking down fundamentals, of the game, both individually and our systems of blocking and defense, and then also offensive, and then get the freshmen up to speed, with the game. I mean that's the biggest factor for freshmen is the speed of the game comes at you quickly, and your decision-making time really shrinks. So getting comfortable with everybody, and so far so good.
Excellent. Yeah, that's the one thing that's so advantageous is to have the freshmen there because, with volleyball being a fall sport, freshmen, first of all, starting college, maybe they're away from home and now adjusting to volleyball. That's a lot to put on a young kid's shoulders.
Absolutely, and our all 3 of our freshmen are great athletes and experienced players, but even that, having them have a 6-month head start or 9-month head start is massive, and so it's really really hard to start as a freshman at this level when you're trying to compete to go to Final Fours. But it can be done, and our newcomers, to learn a new system and the way we do things is significant also.
Yep, absolutely. And now let's jump back. So, where are you originally from?
I'm from the great city of Muncie, Indiana.
All right.
So you may have seen Ball home canning jars somewhere along your journey, and they originated in Muncie, Indiana. So that would probably be the most famous thing that Muncie is for, other than Jim Davis and David Letterman going to
Oh,
Ball
wow.
State.
All right. And what was your path to volleyball? I understand you have kind of a unique path from being a Michigan punter to volleyball.
Yeah, I would say that I played all sports growing up pretty much, and in elementary school, sixth grade, a friend of mine, John Chandel, who we were in class together, said, "Hey, do you want to play volleyball?" And I didn't really know volleyball well. I'd heard of the sport, but didn't know how it was played. And so his dad was the coach at Ball State at the time, and we got a group of us together for 3 summers in a row and played for a month, and then went to AAU nationals, and that was how I got started. And I got into football and golf and stuff and things in high school. Came back to volleyball my junior and senior year, and then played on the club team at Michigan after my brief stint as a punter and kicker on the Michigan football team ended. So got into it again, and then transferred back to Ball State to play and coach.
Oh, wow. And now how was that playing at, Ball State? Any good memories that come out of that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I couldn't have had a better experience as an athlete in college, and we had some great years. We went to the Final Four my freshman year. Unfortunately, didn't make it after that. Came close a couple times. Had some not so good years, result wise. But like I tell our players here, I mean, obviously we're going to try and compete and beat the best in the country, and compete for championships, and we all love doing that. But 20 years from now, you're not going to remember the scores and what your record was, but you're always going to remember the people and how they made you feel, and the environment and culture that you were part of. And I will never ever forget, my time as a student athlete competing with those people together. And I just, you always wish and hope that you have those experiences, for your own players. And because of the transactional ways of college athletics now, it makes it a little bit different. But you just hope you get those experiences, because those relationships last a lifetime.
Yep, definitely. And now, what is the hook volleyball has on you that has turned into a long career in coaching?
Yeah, so I don't know how to describe that, I guess. I mean, I played football, I played basketball, I played baseball, I pole vaulted, I did diving, I tennis, I did everything I get my hands on. I just loved competing in sports. And when I got into volleyball, I just loved how hard it was, but the skill it took to be good at it. I just wanted to do it over and over and over again until I got good enough at it. And I was probably too short to be an outside hitter, but I didn't care. I just loved that challenge of trying to beat the big guys, and just the camaraderie of the spatial awareness and ability of teams to be able to compete within that small confined space. I think
Yeah.
is the one of the ultimate team sports you can have, because it's a small space. You got to learn to work together. You have to have incredible skill, incredible power, incredible explosiveness, and decision making. I mean, there's so many things in our sport that I think are unique, and because there's so many of them at once, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you add in, it's not just a solo aspect. You can't just win with just one star. You
No.
need three people to successfully complete an attack.
Yeah. I think in some ways that's a little bit of a detriment to us in terms of the overall star power of our sport. There's the LeBron James or the Jordan or the Caitlin Clark or the Mia Hamm, that can really impact a game individually in their respective sports. And it's a lot more difficult in our sport to do that. So finding that star power that the media grabs onto, to create their stories is a little bit more difficult. But I think we're just starting to kind of see the evolution of our sport going big time. And I've been saying that for years, but obviously with the numbers of people watching, and the pro leagues, and all of those things happening currently, it's a budding, you know national pastime, maybe. I don't,
Yeah,
probably not yet,
not
but you know what I
yet.
mean.
Yeah. And it's so good to see, talking to a lot of past players, so good to see that we have now a couple of professional leagues here where, the kids don't have to leave the country to play pro sports and they can stay here and, build a big following.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, you hope that the pro leagues survive, and one of them that does in the long run, and I'm sure all the independent leagues in their own right want think theirs is the best product. I wish I was in it more to know which was. I've been to a few games and seen, some on TV, and we have obviously former players, playing across the United States and in Europe, and I some people's pro careers last a season, some last 8 to 10 years,
Yeah.
and but the fact that they get that chance is awesome, and our current freshmen are looking up to our former players and going, man, I wish that could be me someday.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, what was the sort of your path to coaching? From a player transitioning to a coach. You said you coached at Ball State.
Well, no, I did eventually, but I when I was in college, Muncie had one of the best club programs in the country, Muncie Volleyball Club, and had one of the best high school programs in the state. I mean, Steve Shondell made Muncie Burris a power and won 20 some state championships. And
Wow.
I was lucky enough to be his assistant coach and JV coach for a season, and then coached Munciana throughout my whole, playing career. And the passion and love for the game of volleyball that people like Wes Lyon and Dave Shondell and Steve Shondell and others. Mike Lingenfelter came after that in Munciana, and Jim Craig, came as a coach after I'd moved on, to my further journey, but became really good friends with all of those guys and just have a connection with them because of Muncie volleyball. There's something about East Central Indiana that has created a ton of great college players, pro players, and coaches all across the country.
Yeah. Wow. And then, what was your path to Kentucky?
Well, my first college job was John Cook hired me as a restricted earnings coach at Wisconsin in 1994. I was working in a golf course in Myrtle Beach, and a mutual friend called and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this restricted earnings job?" I'm like, "What the hell is that?"
I was just
So
going to
I
say,
don't.
what is
Sure,
that?
I love volleyball. Means you can't make very much money is
Okay.
what it meant. But so John hired me, and I was there 3 seasons, and not making a whole lot of money. And I had an accounting degree. I'm like, man, I don't know. I got this business degree. I think I can make some money. So I got into banking, and then quickly realized I missed the teaching and competition and coaching. And the guy that was my assistant coach in college got the head job at Ball State, asked me to come join him. So I did, and was there a year and a half. And then when John got to Nebraska, he asked me to come join him again there, which I'm lucky, because I quit on him the first time. But was there for 5 seasons. We had an incredible run. I think we were 98-2 in the Big 12 at the time at Nebraska. Offered the job at Kentucky, and there was one direction to go when I got here, and so thought my wife and I, Megan, thought we'd be here 5 years, and here we are going into my 21st season
Wow.
coming up. So
That's amazing. Yeah, coaching as a career is not an easy thing. Talking to different people, assistant coaches and whatnot, some of them have to volunteer first. And that's a really tough thing to try to, get your foot in the door and then be successful and turn it into a career. I don't think people realize the commitment that it takes to be a coach.
yeah, and I think that's the old adage of follow your passions, and if you have a passion for something, chase it. And I think there's very few of us who are lucky enough to be such a good athlete that you can play and make a living and retire and don't have to work a day in your life, again. But in our sport, that doesn't happen. So I think one of the life lessons that I hope our players get out of playing in college um, is that it's not always going to be given to you. And yes, we need to have NIL and revenue share and all of those things because it's long past due. But at some point, that will run out. And so the sweat equity and the working from the ground up to get to set where you need to go as a professional, whatever passion you have, will be the most important thing you can do, because there's very few of us that are lucky enough to, hit the lottery, however you want to describe the lottery, and then benefit and win out for the rest of your life. We got to put time and energy into something. And, um, you know, so it's not an easy job, but I didn't know where it would lead, and I didn't think I'd anywhere close to making the money I make in coaching now when I first started. But I didn't care. I didn't care when I was making $12,000 a year. I didn't care when I'm making $30,000 a year. I didn't care when, I was paying $250 for my apartment. I just couldn't wait to go to work and coach and teach and see people do things they'd never done before.
Yeah. That's awesome. And working with John at Nebraska, what were some of the things you took away from that experience?
Well, probably just the biggest thing is he really cemented in me, which I kind of had a head start with Muncie and Ball State, is that we are teachers. We're teaching people how to play the game of volleyball. And yes, coach is a different word for teacher, but that's what we do. And so John is the consummate teacher and never satisfied and always going to keep trying to get something right. And, to keep training. And, the amount of time and energy it takes to master something is significant. He understood that and never stopped. And, so the commitment and dedication and discipline it takes to be really good at something, people don't realize until you've done it. And then you look back and go, oh my gosh, that was a lot of time and energy I put into this, whether it be just to learn how to pass or set,
Yeah.
or eventually to help a team learn how to become a championship team. I mean, it just takes an enormous amount of time. And, but again, if you have that passion for it, anything can happen.
Yeah, definitely. And that was something with coaching. This past season, my daughter's school asked me to come and help out with the JV side of things. And it is more than just coaching skills. It is not just, teaching somebody how to pass a ball or set a ball. It's like, I don't know about you, but high school girls, oh my God, it's different than just like X and O's.
Yes, very much so. It's look, life is about relationships, life is about people, life is about struggle, life is about failure. I saw, a clip from Karch talking about his time, on the USA national team, and they were talking to the Russian coaches because Russia dominated the sport of volleyball for a long time. And, the coaches asked how they selected their teams because there's so many good players in Russia. And he said that, it's easy. You just find the players that deal with failure the best. It's not the players that deal with success the best, because we all love success, and that's, you want to look forward to that. But when you fail, how do you handle it, and how do you keep moving and getting better? And so, to your point, you have a lot of failure in our sport. If you pass perfect 54% of the time, you're an elite passer. So that means you're failing 46% of the time. That's a big number. So it's encouraging your players to just keep going. It's going to happen. You just got to. But then there's issues that happen off the court, a discipline issue, or, relationship issue with a player, that they're jealousy, or, um, there's so many different things, injuries, and people can't show up. And, a JV team, maybe someone has prom or they have a birthday party. So how do you handle that? Are you supposed to be there or not be there? I mean, I don't want to say it's bullshit to deal with, but it's just stuff that they don't put in the coaching manual.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up a good point there with about the Russian coach and seeing who deals with failure. I talked to Kirsten from Creighton, and something she brought up that I'd never even thought of is like she talked about when she's going to look at players at tournaments and whatnot. She wants to see how that player handles either getting pulled or losing, to see how, because hey, if that's going to be one of my kids, I need to see how they act. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that. It was such an interesting perspective.
There's a lot of people that can, in club and high school, that can jump and bounce the ball straight down and feel good, and stick their chest out and think I'm the best player ever. And then, but she's right. I mean, high character people, with class, people with their ability to respond. When you climb the mountain as a player, or a team, the only way to get to the top of the mountain is climb the mountain. You can't, there's no shortcut, and so you're going to stumble, you're going to fall down, you're going to get hungry, you're going to get thirsty, you're going to, hit a branch and you're going to have to take a detour. You might have to go around over or under something. And so to, her point of how do we handle those things along our journey? Because it's not a straight line to that success point. And you might have a bad day. And so if you do have a bad day and you're sick, you might have to stay and not climb that mountain. So then you got to go double the next day.
Yeah.
And do you whine, cry, bitch, moan? Or do you go, what? These are the cards I've been dealt today. This is how I'm going to play them. This is what I'm doing. You may not get good cards today again. So second day in a row, you'll have bad cards at the poker table. Do you quit or do you keep coming back? And
Right.
I'm not encouraging gambling because I'm not a big gambler. I don't like it, but that's you got to keep playing to get your good cards to win.
Yeah, definitely. And now, those first years for coaching, what were some of the challenging things, if you can remember back then?
Hmm. Man, I don't know what weren't the challenges. Lack of talent comparatively to, where Florida was at the time. Lack of ability to fly to places and, driving 8 hours. Um, Players that kind of liked volleyball, but
Yeah.
really didn't commit to Kentucky to be a champion. They committed because it was maybe a scholarship and a free education. And, it's cool to be on a Division I team, but with a losing mentality and, winners win, type of, there's some people that want to win, but don't want to do what it requires to win. And so encouraging players like, yeah, it's not easy and it's not for everyone. And if you don't feel like this is what you want to do, then you might have a passion for something else. And volleyball might not be and competing might not be your passion, and that's okay. Um, Facilities, I mean, no air conditioning our gym, no air conditioning our practice gym. I mean, the gym, the locker room that we had, smelled like dead rodents,
Oh,
and
geez.
there was a stackable washer and dryer. Managers did the laundry with powdered detergent. I mean, just
Oh, wow.
a myriad of things that when I came from Nebraska, I was like, wait, this this is what we got.
Oh,
Um,
but
so you're constantly chipping away and battling.
yeah.
And I don't know why this just came to my mind, but the movie that is Escape from Alcatraz, and chipped his way out of
Yeah.
to get out, and that took years, and so we couldn't get to the top of the SEC unless we chipped away at it.
Yeah. Out of the gates, though, you started the program and turned it into a winning program. What attributed to over the years continually building onto that success? Clearly, the one common factor was the coaching, obviously, but what other things helped you maintain and build off that successful record?
Probably the tangible things I've always believed is you have a good libero, good ball control, and good setting, you have a chance. You have a chance to win because you can keep the ball in play, you can set hittable balls, and as long as your attackers don't air yourself to losses, you at least can keep it in play long enough that the other team might hit it out of bounds. So
Yeah.
I didn't discourage aggression and going for it, but I just wanted us to play with a level of IQ that gave us a chance. And then I think that, I had some coaches growing up that probably made me feel like I was better than I was, probably convinced me that I was pretty good at something and I probably wasn't quite as good as the others, but they made me feel that way. And I just always felt it was important that our players knew that I believed in them regardless of how good they were, and that this is our team and we're good enough to beat Georgia. We're good enough to beat Tennessee. We're good enough to beat Florida. And this is how we're going to do it. And I just, strongly believe that, talent's just the starting line. It's all the other stuff that gets you where you want to go.
Yeah.
And so encouraging and convincing your players, as Marv Dunphy would say, that they're bulletproof. And, I think that's such an important piece. Like, there's no reason why we can't beat the giant. There's no reason why we can't beat the person that's five, and, probably because I had a chip on my shoulder my whole life, that, the 6'5" kid was better than me. I said,
Right.
you know, I may not win today, but I'm going to win tomorrow, you know.
Yeah. Over the years, what are some of the memories that stick out for you? Obviously all the accolades of, winning the SEC, the national championship. What are some of the, big ones that really hit home for you?
On the court or off the court.
Either.
I mean, the first SEC championship was, something I always remember down at Georgia, winning that match to win it all finally. I mean, we've been, just chipping away and finished second 3 or 4 times and heartbreaking losses, and could have been easy to just turn and go the other direction because we didn't get it done. And that was significant win on the court. And that we kept saying, let's be the 11th team, let's be the 11th team, let's be the 11th team, the first SEC to win the national championship, and convinced people in the recruiting process that we could do it. And so those, but again, ultimately, I will not necessarily be thinking about the matches themselves. I'll be thinking about the people we did it with. And that, again, I feel like every coach that I've coached with and been part of this program, and every player and every student manager, there's something that I took from them to try and encapsulate in my life to be better. And we can always learn, we can always improve, we can always strive for something more. And when you stop doing that, you might as well get out. Just there's always something more we can do and learn, and or just polish, to get to the next level. And I just truly believe that the people, you're only as good as the people around you.
Yeah. Excellent. And now, if you could go back to the, first year Craig coaching, what advice would you have for him?
I got a lot. I got a lot of advice for that person. I was, I just was pissed all the time. I just like,
so you were
what
intense.
Like, we suck. Quit doing that, and at the appropriate time, I knew enough to, encourage and convince my players they're better, but I just had zero patience. I just couldn't. Why aren't we getting this? This is, and just I'd blow up. And I finally over the years realized that, negativity, not, I wouldn't say I'm ever a negative coach, but just you can coach with emotion, but you can't coach emotionally. And I used to coach emotionally, and that you can't ever stay in the moment when you're coaching like that. You're always living in the past or thinking about the future. And the only way to be your best right now is to, mentally be here. And I was not very good at that early on.
Yeah, it's a fine line, walking that line of intensity and knowing how far to push a player before you're that distraction.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think took a few years, but one of my former players called Sarah Rumley. She's the head coach at App State, and she was, I can't remember if she was there or somewhere else then. We talked recruiting one time. She goes, I just always love watching your teams play because they play free. And I always wanted to get out of my players' way and let them play on the court and not look over at me and not look over our staff. That, John Wooden always say, if you haven't taught, if they haven't learned, you haven't taught. And so if you're still trying to teach in the middle of a game, it's too late,
Yeah.
So.
All right. And now, from a Kentucky standpoint, what makes Kentucky unique? That, what's the pitch you when you're talking to parents, like, this is a place for your child to come and, grow into an adult and as a volleyball player.
I mean, I would say it's more substance than flash, and that, while we all like cool things and nice shoes and uniforms and, travel the right way and those types of things. I mean, substance is what will get you through life, and, the core of who you are and the values that you embrace are the things that are going to get you through life in the end. And, there's no shortcuts. And, and some people don't like that. People have left our program because they didn't value some of those things. And, but I think that in the end, for sustainability over the course of time, you have to have those core values that last a lifetime.
All right. And now, during the season, are there, any dates that are circled onto your, like you can't wait, like senior night or, first practice? What are the sort of the dates like you guys look forward to as a team?
Uh, I don't know if, I don't know if you circle dates, matches, times. I think if you do, then you're placing higher value on one particular match than others. And while there's matches you look forward to, and sure players, there's a few that will be looking forward to this year. Um, you know, we can't, the most important match is the next one, all the coach speak stuff, but I just, look forward to the first day of practice and, the, that, when you get to the first day of practice, the team looks like this, a white piece of paper.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, it's going to be this beautiful picture of what we painted throughout the year. And so I just, that blank canvas at the beginning of the year, I think is, man, look at this thing. It's beautiful, isn't it? And they're looking at it like, there's nothing there. I'm like, well, I know, but by the end of the year, it's going to be this awesome portrait of Kentucky volleyball 2025. And that's what I look for.
All
I just
right.
look forward to kind of looking back at the end and just seeing what we created over the course of time, that only time, energy, experiences, practices, and time together paints for us. And
All right.
that that's what I hope happens. And we want to be in Kansas City. We want to compete for national championship, and we want
Yeah.
to. This team, I think, is driven to be great. But there's a lot of things that we have to overcome and grow from throughout the year to get there.
Yep. All right. And now for yourself, is there any pregame rituals or routines you do or that you have?
Like on the day or like an hour before the match or
Yeah,
what?
whatever. Like, when I was talking to Shannon Windsor from Canada, hers was she needs to have a Diet Coke. That was her thing.
Um, I mean, I probably need to do some sort of exercise, whether I go for a run or, lift. Definitely gonna have to have my coffee every day. So I'm not a all day coffee drinker, but I'll drink coffee in the morning. I like to have some solitude, my time, just 30 minutes of just, to kind of just let my mind, mindfulness, meditation, whatever you want to be, walk, or, I think it's important to practice being in the moment, because in matches, it's really, really important that if it's 14-12, that you're currently at 14-12, you're not at, God damn it, why did we lose that last set? Or, man, I
Yeah.
hope we play well in the end of the set to win. So you got to practice that, I think, to be able to do it when pressure's on and the moment hits. But yeah, we have kind of a daily game day routine that we go through each and every day, and it's mundane. Sometimes it's boring, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's redundant. All the things that you might say, but I just want us to feel the same when match time comes
All
that we
right.
did the last match we played.
And speaking of coffee, I saw your Instagram post, I think it was yesterday, the other day, where you got your Starbucks and you got your name wrong. What's your Starbucks coffee for those people that love Starbucks?
Well, in the morning it's just coffee with a little bit of cream in it, but in the afternoon it's a London Fog tea. So
Okay.
that's my go-to. I accidentally tasted it one time. I grabbed the wrong Starbucks cup one time, and I walked out and took a drink of it. And I'm like, wait, that's not mine. And I went back, and so that's how I accidentally came across it. But yeah, I do think that the employees there intentionally screw up your names just to mess with you a little bit. But that's
Yeah.
one I have not seen yet. So I've been going to Starbucks for 30 years.
Yep. And we saw Reg, right? RAIG.
Yes,
Yep. There we go.
yes, yes.
uh,
What a good.
and now, talking, leadership is so important on the court and on the team. How do and with college volleyball, you're sort of rotating out, you're washing out the next, the seniors move on, whether they're the leaders or what. And how do you identify and try to find the leadership for, each season? Or does it just, from a grassroots standpoint, the players have it in them?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think the easiest way to lead is by example, and so if the younger players come in and they have older players to, kind of model the expectations and behaviors that we feel are important as a program and a team, are is built over the course of time. And I, as a coach, I think is important that I model the behaviors I want our players to be and but I do believe that leadership has no age. and that if you're a freshman or senior, you can lead in your way. It doesn't have to be, by, standing on a, soapbox and telling everybody what to do. So I think it's fostered, it's encouraged. When you see leadership behaviors, celebrate them and share with your players why, those are good leadership behaviors. I think reading a book and learning and watching others in other sports, I think is important too. I think there's little nuggets and things that you can take from a lot of different areas in leadership to help you understand what it is. And, it's leadership is getting people to want to follow you. It's not pulling people down the tracks.
Yeah.
And, so you're going to be followed if you do the right thing because it's the right thing.
Excellent. And, you talked a little bit about a few minutes ago. We talked about, staying in the moment, staying present. How do you keep your freshmen, sort of, I guess, grounded? First of all, you have some of these club players, they're coming in, they've been starters their whole, 4 years in club. How do you not lose them mentally? Because it's a lot of weight on their shoulders. How do you sort of like, keep them grounded and mentally focused?
I think it's a conversation that starts in the recruiting process. Hey, you're obviously one of the best players in the country, and that's why we're talking to you. And the when you get to a program in college volleyball, everybody's really good and everybody was in your shoes at some point or another. And so now it's coming in and proving yourself. And so along that journey, you're going to fail. And along that journey, you're going to have success. But, things in the past don't always dictate things in the future. And so the past success that you've had in club or high school doesn't always dictate, your future successes. And so you still have to put in the time, energy, and sweat to be really good, because again, talent's the starting line, like we said earlier. And so when you get to college, it's, are you continuing to get stronger? Are you getting better with repetition and demonstrated performance? Are you taking care of your body? Are you staying in shape? Are you, staying ahead in school so that you're not thinking about the failed a math exam you had at noon when you're trying to practice at 3? And, I think it's just staying again in the moment and being okay with failure. Like
Okay.
you're going to hit the ball out of bounds. You're going to get stuffed. You're going to make a bad set. You're going to miss a serve. It's fine. Just continue to do the things that we're asking you to do and the way we're trying to get you to play at the highest level, and let time, and get yourself to the point where you can be and build your confidence. But I'm not going to tell them that they're great and all of a sudden they believe in themselves and they're confident. It's going to be the time and energy and repetition and demonstrated performance that they do that will build that confidence.
All right. And now, from a club standpoint, is there anything you're seeing from the players that are coming out of club and playing at the college level that you wish clubs would focus more on? Is it more all-around skill, more service, or sort of everything?
I don't know if there's anything specific. I think that, I think we try in our practices and throughout years is to train our players to be volleyball players, not a middle, not a setter, not an outside, not a libero. I mean, they're volleyball athletes and players. And so allowing everybody to do everything, allowing people to play deep court and pass the ball in your middles, or, maybe you have to block middle if you're an outside hitter, and maybe have to, if you're middle, you got to play some back row, and, just encourage, and first contact is obviously really important. Whether it's a dig or a serve receive, and because you always have a chance. And so those would be the best. And serving, I think serving is really easy in high school and club, and you got to learn how to put some pace on it in college to give yourself. If you don't put any pace on it, you don't make the ball move. Good teams are going to ram it down your throat.
Yep. Excellent. And now, coming from the finance background that you have, are you an analytics guy? Are you looking at those numbers, or are you, making, or more of a gut decision person?
I like analytics. I like numbers and statistics. I wouldn't say I'm, that's all I think. I don't let that necessarily dictate all my decisions. I think there's a combination of things that occur that help formulate the decisions I would make. And uh, sometimes that's frustrating to staff, players, all those things. But, I think past experience and wisdom helps me get through some of those times where I'm not sure on decision making. But it's a big part of our game, and it's a big part of, we're looking at our statistics over the last 4 years. What's our trend? What are our trends?
Hmm.
Offensively and defensively, and maybe where do we need to put some focus this spring and the fall to improve on, to match the numbers that of our best teams that gave us the best chance to compete to win it all.
All right. And then, over the years, what are some of the key changes or trends you've observed in coaching methods that have really helped the game?
Um, our because in our sport the athletes are getting bigger, faster, stronger, and able to block higher and cover more court. It's getting harder and harder to score. And I the last 2 years I've had Ben Josephson, a fellow Canadian, with us, and intentionally wanted to hire someone like that from the men's game to kind of get an idea of how the game is played at the net a little bit better. And so it's really hard to terminate the ball these days against good teams that have a good libero when you're out of system, and we're out of system half the time.
Hmm.
So in those moments, how do we become better at either scoring or not allowing the other team to score?
All right. And over the years, what have been some of the most significant lessons you've learned as a coach, and how has it influenced your philosophy for coaching?
Um, I think that there's you know a lot of different ways to coach our sport, and that you have to form and develop a philosophy that you believe in yourself, and that you can deliver and coach your team in the way that you know how to, and not try to be someone else or someone different. And that your way is good enough, and your way is going to allow you and your team to have success. And but you have to master it. I mean, you got to spend time, and persistence, I think, is maybe the most important life skill that all of us have, and whatever it is. And so as a coach, persistence, and things may not be working, but you have the persistence to get through some of the good and bad times. And as a player, if you give up because you didn't score 5 times in a row, then you're never going to score. If you don't give up and you persist, then you're going to have a chance.
Yeah. All right. And speaking of being on top of your game, you're at that premier level of coaching. How do you stay updated with the latest development and coaching techniques? Do you look at other sports or other coaches who are successful in different sports?
Absolutely. I love listening to other coaches from other sports, and how they describe situations, how they talk about leadership, how they handle failure, how they the new ways of innovation in their sport and our sport. I try and talk to a lot of coaches on the road recruiting. They may think I'm just asking a question when I might be, asking a question I'm trying to learn, and, trying to get better. But, I've learned stuff from high school coaches here in the area about how they've done practices to keep their players engaged, and building on things. And just, constant effort to learn and get better.
All right. And speaking of practice, how important is, that first drill in a practice to, keep everybody focused? Is that like, that's one of the key things to have a successful practice, is get that, first drill out of the way and everybody buy in.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think practice design is important. It's important to, be consistent in your practice. It's important to, I think, some former colleagues of mine, said it's very important that you start competing right away to engage the mindset of your players. And, I think that's true to an extent, but I think the level of focus and intensity that your staff has each and every day is pretty important. So there might be some drills that aren't always competitive right away, but they're important for learning. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if the first drill makes or breaks you but it needs to have value in what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, you always try and tell your players not how you start, it's how you finish. And
Yeah. That's
because
true.
we can get down 5-0 a lot.
Yeah. And actually, that's a good point. So being down 5-0, our high school coach talks about it as Mojo. You've just lost Mojo. How do you get Mojo back to your team? When you're in these tense, matches, what are some things you sort of try to do to sort of get that momentum or the Mojo back to your side?
Yeah, I don't think there's any win one for the Gipper speech that you're going to give. It's down 5-0 and all of a sudden it's 5-5. But there's a level of urgency that maybe you need to have as a coach, and that maybe didn't you look back and you didn't have to begin the match, that maybe can change. But I still think it's important that you're in the moment. You can only get to 0-1 in this point.
Yeah.
You can't get from 0-3. And so if your mentality and mindset is the same as it was, and will be at 25, you have a chance to win point one. And, you cannot be your best at 0-5 unless your mind is on 0-5, and 0 to get to 1. If you're belaboring the fact that you sucked for the last 5 points, you're not probably going to be down 6-0.
Yeah. And adding into that, how, I ask a lot of the players, when they're on a bad run, how do they mentally reset? How do you work with your players to come up with a routine to get them sort of reset, refocus, and just focus on that moment?
I don't. I don't know. I think that, again, you have to be present. You have to be here now. I don't care what just happened. We have to learn from our mistakes. We have to, man, on that tight set, I'm probably not going to swing as hard as I can into the block. I'm going to try and rebound it or wipe it or, something. And then you flush it and you're gone. You're on to the moment. You're on to the current moment. And, I think mindset and mentality of being able to, we do practice mindfulness stuff at being in practice. And, I think it's more and more prevalent these days because of social media, and there's a huge value in all the things that our players are reading and seeing, the positive things on on their phones, and some of that is that those types of things. But you have to rehearse it. You can practice serving and get better at it. How do you practice getting your mind to be present? You have to practice it.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't think there's a magic wand, or some people would say, tie this blue ribbon on your shoe, and every time you feel like you're in this negative mindset, look at that blue ribbon, and it's going to get you into the positive current moment. I mean, there's some validity, I think, to things like that. That you know what it's there for, and then oh shit, I got to start thinking about now.
Right. Yep.
But I think you have to practice it.
Yep, definitely. And now, for you as a coach, what has been what's the most rewarding thing you get out of coaching? To going back to the one, I tell people, why did I get into coaching? And we talked a little bit about that, but I'll always remember the one moment where I was trying to teach a player how to do something defensively. Couldn't get it. Got it. They finally did it. And I was just like, oh my God, that was so cool to finally see that athlete do it after trying so hard to get it, and they eventually did it. And I was like, I got to have that again. I got to get that dopamine again in my mind, that, that was so then snowballing that one thing into the second thing, into the 10th thing, into the 50th thing. And then coming as a freshman, they're just like all over the map. They don't know what's coming or going. They're trying to figure out where the buildings are, classes, get their dorm set. And then they leave this mature adult that's ready to conquer this interview, to go work for this company, or they're going off to France to play, or, I just love seeing our players when they're moved on and doing something special, unique for themselves. And that's the most rewarding thing, is because the most transformational time in our lives is college. And, you see that, I get to see that from a front row seat every year. Yeah.
And that's cool.
That is awesome. I had a coach ask, as a question to ask some of these coaches, how can they develop or work with their players to be sort of better passers, be calm?
Yeah. If you have a magic wand for that, I'd love it. Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. One, it's like when you teach a catcher how to stop a curveball that bounces from getting behind the plate, you got to learn how to put your knee down, turn your glove under to catch it so on the bounce so it hops. And you can't just all of a sudden do that.
Right.
You have to do that move repetitively over and over again until it becomes second nature. I don't know if that's a good enough description. So it's kind of same thing. If the ball is coming at my right shoulder, how do I manipulate my posture to create my angle to get on the sweet spot? A lot of times what we will do is we don't count perfect passes necessarily when we're doing drills. We will count, were your shoulders in front of your knees on that pass? You're in the correct posture, yes or no? If no, then doesn't count. Did the ball hit both arms? Yes or no? Then it counts. Did it hit your sweet spot? Yes or no? So we're asking them, did they correctly do it? I don't care about the result.
Yeah.
But did those things happen? And so we'll do a drill. We're serving balls, and the drill isn't over until we get 20 of those.
Yeah.
Say 3 passers. And so you're encouraging to do the proper technique. You're not encouraging the result.
Excellent. I like that.
And then the other part of that is, look, if we're only going to pass perfect 54% of the time, whatever the number is,
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing the other 40% of the time? Just don't get aced and don't, pass it. So we have to send a free ball.
Yeah.
So if we can eliminate those things, then we're going to be really good.
All right. Excellent. And now this past season, there's really 2 big rules they added in. One is the double contact, and then the other one's the sort of the double libero. What were your takes on, positive and negatives? Did you see a big impact on the double rule?
It's negligible. I mean, it didn't impact many matches. I think it helped some players that had some anxiety of setting at times. It's like, I can just chuck it up there. It won't matter.
Right.
I don't know. It didn't change the game a whole lot, I don't think. I could be wrong, but I don't know how many points to set it really affected. Maybe 1. Double libero, I don't have a great feel on that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't utilized it. I'm not sure that we need to, but I think there could be some value in our game because liberos can serve, and I have to figure out maybe we need to do that for the serving situation. And so I don't know yet.
No worries. I think that double contact, we're going to start seeing it in our high school conference this year. I think you'll probably see a bigger impact there with just taking that judgment out of the ref's hands and just enabling the kids to have longer rallies. And like you said, the anxiety of that setter who's just been called for a double. It's like, I'm not going to set, I'm going to bump pass. And I think that will have a bigger effect, a positive impact on our game at the level we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the only downside is it might increase the length of matches in high school.
Yes, that's true. That's a good point. But from a state of volleyball, I think personally, I think we're in a good state with the volleyball right now. The level of play we're seeing, the excitement, the growth of it. What's your take on where we are?
No, absolutely. I mean, everybody's playing the game. It's on TV all the time, or YouTube, or ESPN app, or I mean, it's everywhere. And so I think it's important over the next 3 years that we get the pro league figured out, so we have one thriving pro league. And just having, I don't know what it is. I know a lot of people involved in those pro leagues, and I have a lot of respect for the effort they're putting into it, and it's incredible that what we're seeing right now. And I think the next 2 years of college athletics is going to really say where our sport is too. Is it a priority or is it not a priority?
Yeah.
Because college athletic departments are going to have to make choices, and whether they believe it or not, they're going to have to make choices on what's a priority at your particular school. Is it volleyball or is it some other sport?
Yeah.
And there's just not enough money to go around to support all the sports that we're supporting now.
Yep, that's true. And now, I had Anders on, one of your past assistants, and he I was chatting with him the other day, and I asked him for a couple of questions for you. So he sent them
shit.
They're not bad. So actually, I had a couple of the Hawaii guys on, and they asked each other questions. Those are worse. These are easy.
Okay.
All right. Most memorable match of your coaching career.
I'd say go back to the first SEC championship because we've been trying so hard to win it, and it took a long time to finally get it. And he was part of that, and he was part of both. And winning the national championship during COVID. COVID was brutal, and to finally get to Omaha and have a chance to compete for a national championship in April, and we started like August 4th.
Wow.
Are we playing or are we not playing? Are we playing or are we not playing? Are we playing part in the season fall? Wait, we can't play these matches this weekend because the opposing team has COVID, and we're on the way to the airport,
Wow.
and we might not be able to get on the plane because the other team may have COVID, just the uncertainty of that time. And to finally that was an emotional time because we were all just absolutely spent physically and
Yeah.
mentally. And there's a picture in my wall over here of I just had to sit down after that match and just collect myself because it was just so physically exhausting and mentally exhausting. And to be able to do it during that time, I think was, pretty damn rewarding.
All right. Second question he says, you started coaching, then you got out, then got back in to start his career. What pulled you back into the profession?
Yeah, I mean, I got it. I was working in banking and I had a really cool opportunity with a bank in Milwaukee. And I had just gotten a promotion and I was like, okay, this is, I'm going in the right direction. And then my assistant coach from college called me, like I think I told you earlier.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, I got to think about this. And again, I just, if you have a passion for something, and I had a passion, I love seeing people do things they'd never done before. I love seeing teams kind of evolve and become something special over the course of time. And, I do love competing. And, I think that we had to compete to win a lot of matches. And I just love being in those moments. It absolutely sucks and is gut wrenching when you lose the tough ones, but which makes it winning the big ones even more rewarding. And honors is a big part of a lot of great wins here at Kentucky, and we suffered through a lot of tough losses and agonizing situations. And so I missed that feeling of exhilaration when you finally overcome something. And the struggle is all part of it. And if athletes think that it just is all roses all the time and winning just comes, it's just not. You have to go through the tough times, and then I think there's such a learning experience that for the rest of life.
All right. Now, was it a hard sell to your wife? Hey, I got this nice job. We're going to go coaching.
Definitely, we've just gotten married a couple years prior, and we both love coaching at Nebraska. Megan was a soccer coach for 10 years at Nebraska, and great job. I interviewed a couple of different places that week, and she had been to Kentucky, lucky Lexington. She played in the Nebraska team, had played here, and she really liked,
Oh, nice.
the area and the city, and it was a jump, but we were ready to do it. And I didn't want to be a head coach until I had a partner to do it with, because there's a lot of lonely moments as a head coach, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
luckily she's been a coach and she still is a coach, and she understands the highs and lows and tells me to suck it up sometimes when I'm feeling sorry for myself. So
Excellent. All right. He has one more question. He says the collegiate athletics environment has constantly changed, but never as much as it has in the period we're in now. What have you done to adapt and keep up? I think he's looking for hints here, maybe.
yeah. If I hadn't been in coaching for 25 plus years prior to this, it'd probably be a little bit harder. I think some people that aren't currently just got into it are like, what the hell? This is crazy. Because it is. I mean, some of the stuff we're having to work through is crazy, and
Yeah.
some of the really non-realistic things that we're having to make decisions on is tough. I think it's, again, it's just keep persisting, you just got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your own physical and mental well-being, and do the things that give you an opportunity to release. But change is inevitable, and adapting to the game and adapting to the portal and NIL, and
Mm-hmm.
again, I think it's hey, if we gain players or lose players, look, guys, this is our people. These are our people right now. This is how we're going to be successful, and I can't spend a whole lot of energy worrying about what was or what will be. It's like this is right now, and
Yeah.
you get too caught up in what you wish it was or would be, you're gonna drive yourself crazy.
All right. So I got a fun question. So I had Eric Shoji on a while ago, and him and Taylor Averill have this thing. What's the toughest position in volleyball? So Craig, what is the toughest position in volleyball?
Oh man. I think probably the hardest position is middle. I think the other positions require more skill and more time to be really good at, but I think the middle is so hard to read setters. It's so hard to transition. You're in the middle of everything all the time. Your success rate blocking is minimal. You don't get set a whole lot.
No.
When the bros and passers don't pass the ball, you're like, damn it, can you pass the freaking ball up here so I can get some
Yeah.
swings? I just think it's a tough position. I have a lot of respect for middles that just grind it out day in, day out, and don't get the glory that, some of the setters and outside hitters and liberos get. And, I just think it's a vital piece of your defense.
And now away from court, away from volleyball, well, what are some things you enjoy?
Oh, my family, my kids. I love watching my kids compete. I love watching my wife's soccer team do well in high school. And I do like to golf. I do like to run. Love being at the beach or skiing. I like staying active. I'm not a sit in the lawn chair poolside, and I will, but I'd rather be active doing things.
Yeah.
So I like adventurous things, and done some stupid things in my life, from cliff diving and things like that. That I'm lucky I'm still here.
Yeah. What's your favorite place? Where's your favorite place to go skiing?
Probably Snowmass or Steamboat in
Okay.
Colorado.
Nice.
Never been to Whistler. I've heard a lot of great things
Yeah.
about it. I'd love to go up there, and but been to Snowmass a lot, Steamboat a lot. Really, really love those mountains. Just big, a lot of variety.
Nice. Well, Coach, you survived the podcast, but before I let you go, like with past guests, I look for you to recommend somebody in your volleyball circle that would have a great story and come on and share with us.
Um, a guy that's been, really close friend of mine for a long, two close friends of mine, been a part of my inner circle that I talk to a lot through the ups and downs. Scott Kniffle, he's the D2 coach at Wayne State in Wayne, Nebraska, and took him to the Final Four from, middle of nowhere to, and consistently successful, always knocking on the door. He's been really good for a long period of time. And then Brandon Rothenthall, who wasn't a went to Pepperdine, wasn't an elite player for Marv Dunphy, but learned a lot from that program, and took Lipscomb in Nashville from irrelevance to relevant, and consistently good year in, year out. Those are two people that, I think have the qualities of great coaches to be sustainable.
All right. Well, we'll get them on. Well, Coach, again, thank you so much. Good luck in spring and good luck next season.
All right, Barry, thanks a lot. It was a great time.